4, 3, 2, 1. Well, hello, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, my friends, depending where you are. I'm Emily Windsor Craig, and this is where I am on Saturday, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on November the 28th. Wow. History Reset is brought to you each Saturday to bring valuable information to the public that corporate media just refuse to divulge. This program is a public service, but please donate to People's Internet Radio to keep the people's truth coming at you. Today's topic in History Reset is the future that the globalists see before us. Okay, and in the comments section, I have put a couple of links at YouTube. One is about the current beliefs about reset, and the second one is the Georgia Guidestones. All right, because what I want to do is look at how the globalists think and what they feel the future ought to look like. If you've ever looked at the Georgia Guidestones, you notice that the first thing on the list is maintain 500 million, which is an 85% decrease in the world's population. All right. So the number one thing they intend to do is kill 85% of us off. Okay. All right. This has happened before on this world. If you follow either John Levi or Flat Earth British Martin Lidecky, you already know that we have evidence of many entire civilizations and city centers that were reset and were emptied and are still empty, right? And if you Google reset mankind, look at the number of videos that talk about the ones that have occurred in the past and what we've been able to find and the likelihood of having a reset in the present. What a reset looks like, apparently, according to the people who look at it, is that the people who do the work disappear. We don't know what happens to the leadership. But the working people disappear, and the leadership either go underground or off-world. So this week, I was doing my usual thing. And when I get stuck on an area, I need to refresh the brain. I take a walk. Okay, I'll take a walk around London, around Paris, around Berlin. And this week, it just struck me like a bolt of lightning. The cities are already empty. The cities have been emptied by the pandemic. And if you read the plans, the emptying is going to continue. All right? The emptying is going to continue until, all right, with only 500 million people left on the planet, there are about 200 nations, okay? That gives every nation about 2.5 million people. Now, Britain right now is around between 60 and 70 million, they say. If Britain only had 2.5 million people and London is 9 million, Britain would be a ruin, a wreck. If the United States only had 2.5 million people left, they would all fit in Los Angeles. They would all fit in the Bay Area, and the rest of the country would be empty, what it almost is anyway. I remember when I left Texas, I was only there for 15 months, but in Texas, there are 200 ghost towns. And since the diversification and globalization of industry, American towns and cities have been emptied, and what they have in store for us is more emptying, not less. All right? Now, the media, their lock, stock, and trade is violence, but they don't seem to have any interest in solving any of the problems that have led to civic strife. The media are ignorant of how problems get solved in method. That's why I say they're stupid, because they don't even want to confront the topic. Today's dialogue has to do with, well, freedom. Is there more freedom when all the people are gone? Or is there more freedom when all the people are here? But I don't think the issue is freedom. I don't think the issue is freedom from surveillance, for instance. It's not even freedom from having to have a history. You have to have your papers wherever you go, whatever you're doing. You have these records that follow you around, whether they're correct or not. You never know. But for me today, the issue is about freedom is putting a stop to crime. Freedom is stopping the crimes that are perpetrated and carried out in the name of governance, in the name of control, and in the name of professional rule baiting. Okay, what we are witnesses to are crimes against the living, against babies and children and school kids by bullies, and young girls by men socialized to be mean. We want to see the crimes against moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas stopped, and not just by the presumed authorities, medical techniques, and bureaucratic obligations, but by the children who have no respect for elders anymore. And they've been taught that in academia, okay, in the Common Core curriculum. Our society, instead of operating from do what you say and say what you do, operates by treachery. Come on, let's face it, in politics, they say this, but then they do that. They promise one thing, but then they do the opposite. I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about the rest of them, okay? They lie, obfuscate, and perjure the truth. Our country has come to be full since the Iran-Contra adventure, full of protection rackets. And a protection racket is robbing Peter to pay Paul. And you pay me or I'll hurt you, okay? And the professions have become a lot like that. They do not guarantee our health. We pay them to clean up the messes that are created in legislation that favors the big guy and the money guy. You see what I'm saying? Finally, all or nothing, you believe this or else. The divide and conquer of the media has come to the point where people are laughing at the newspapers because they're stupid. And these social crimes are not being interdicted and they're not being prosecuted. And we as a people feel victimized by everything now, right? Now, yes, in social media, on the internet, it is legal to operate a corporation and shut down, censor, speaking to ideas, the First Amendment right. It's legal somehow to do that in business. So why doesn't somebody go talk to the law profession and ask them why this is legal? While the Constitution says no, doesn't anybody care that it's what is unlawful constitutionally is legal in practice, okay? Now, I've had some really bad experiences with the legal profession, all right? In my 3 legal cases, the one that I went pro se, I did okay, but the 2 where I had legal representation, I had my clock cleaned, okay? And the legal professional indulgence is part of our national problem of problem solving avoidance because courts are adversarial and every conflict or dispute is always couched in money. And lawyers make money, in fact, they make their living on conflicts and disputes, not on maintaining the health and progress and knowledge of wise law. So, are most attorneys profiteering on conflicts and disputes? Of course. Profits and profits are all that count. And the trolls only speak opinions, they lack substance. So, what the New World Order is planning is to empty out our society of 85% of its people. Is this what you want? All right. Now, the people running the New World Order are the same people who have stupefied and dumbed down our kids in school, the same people profiting off manufactured, developed diseases from Fort Detrick, Maryland, and cereal wars, the same people using the mainstream media to deceive and trick us all into oligarchy and into a deep state, the same people who run the secret space program and medical and psychiatric professions, and the collection companies who prey on debtors and victims. So, what do we do? You know, being bought off is a protection racket. Divide and conquer is another protection racket. Leadership treachery is a protection racket. So, when will protection racketeering, along with bribery, slavery, and slavery encompasses human resource management and social services, and adoption agencies sell babies, and user, when do these crimes become unlawful? That's all I want to know. In this election, Biden is the actual personification of the deep state, of warmongering because he wants to go in and bolster Palestine at the expense of somebody else, and human trafficking his immigration ideas. He is the actual personification of the deep state, right? So what about the other members of the deep state? What do they seek to attain? Well, they seek to attain isolation, alienation, and the fear that we will be infected. But that's not the problem, okay? Because the COVID symptoms, if you've listened to Judy Mikovits or George Webb talk about how COVID works and how the tests are done, the symptoms, which are dehydration of the lungs and suffocation, those symptoms increase where 5G has been rolled out. And it's not just 5G that increases the symptoms. Glyphosate, that herbicide in grains and in produce, does the same thing to the body cells, dehydrates the cells, suffocates you, and produces exosomes, which show up in the testing. Anybody who has allergies or asthma or blood disorder already has exosomes in their body, so they're already going to test positive. So the number of people that test positive doesn't mean anything because the disease itself is only less than 1% ever fatal. Yes, follow the science, right? Okay, big tech is installing 5G everywhere, but they don't tell you that the 5G effects mimic the virus or that a new wave of sickness could be 5G driven. So they want to cull 85% of the world. And the vaccine isn't going to help you, it's going to chip you. Our biggest challenge right now is not to get sucked into catastrophizing, okay? Because what we're looking at is engineered trouble before our eyes. And of course, Jesus was not pacifically or politically correct in his day. So let's learn to be like Jesus, you know? This is all coming to be about corporate fascism gone to seed. They run think tanks and they fund quackademia and they pander to corporate profiteering and the divide and conquer stance of media. You know, governance is not operating very well right now. Governance ought not be run by just a 51% naive majority, because then popularity and styles and fashions are the most important value in the idea space. Sure, nor should governments be run exclusively by property owners, as in the Republican model. Governments ought to be run by accountable executives who know problem solving and shit from Shinola. You know, monarchs used to be just such executives, in theory anyway. Okay, all right. And what is. It doesn't matter what you feel or how you wish or what you believe. The truth will out, and we cannot stop that. Nor can the Democrats stop the fact this election was sidelined, waylaid, rigged, and we were defrauded. The election fix we are looking at has a long history. It has been a coup for a long, long time. Now, a lot of people are not aware, and I became aware through Alfred, what was it? Anyway. It's been an issue since the 40s of getting socialism and collective thought into academia and into government. And the Smith Act, okay, used to catch people who advocated the overthrow of the government, like my uncle, Gene Dennis. The Smith Act, 76 U.S. Congress, third session, Chapter 439, 54 Stat 670, 18 U.S.C., paragraph 2385. That is a U.S. federal statute enacted in June of 1940 against advocating a coup. And so what has the Democratic Party been doing since 2016? Okay. The entire Democratic Party has been on this path to remove the legally, lawfully elected President Trump. And they're open about it. But for some reason, the Department of Justice just doesn't notice. The FBI noticed Gene Dennis. The FBI does not notice the Democratic Party. Lionel said something really important yesterday that I caught in his newsletter. He said, but you never really understood how corrupt the GOP was, who resented his power more than anything. GOP has no successors because the last thing they want is another Donald Trump. And I started thinking about that. Wow. Yes, that's why the neocons and rhinos are holding back, because Trump is 74, okay? And he doesn't have, there is not a faction of tried and true traditional, I don't say conservative, I say traditional. And I also minimize the churches and the evangelicals' effect on governance. And I do that because the evangelicals are just so silly. You know, the ones that say Jesus is going to show up any day, we're going to be raptured, and we're going to be rescued out of this. Come on. Let's not deal with that. All right. But if you say traditional, we need a traditional party. The traditions of freedom of speech, freedom of association, the traditions of the amendments cover more people than just the Christian evangelicals, okay? Because Christianity has come in the United States to sort of be defined by the evangelicals and their obsessive attachment to Israel, which is only 41% nominally Jewish anyway. All right. Israel doesn't act Jewish according to Jewish law, so why are we taking Israel as if they are Jewish? All right. There are a lot of the specific stipulations in Jewish holy law that you don't see Israel paying any attention to. No, the conservative evangelicals are people waiting to be rescued, raptured, and ascended and attached to how it was done in the past, what worked out well then, without regard for what is actually broken, unworkable, corrupted today by the character flaws of civil bureaucrats and servants who have become unaccountable for their behavior, actions, and outcomes because they are compromised. They are compromised by blackmail, they are compromised by bribery, they are compromised by pay to play and influence peddling. And so legislation is a contest between who has the most pull, not what is correct for solving a problem in the nation. The people who are evangelicals are attached to the idea that Christian covenant is about beliefs. But my experience of Christianity is not about beliefs. Beliefs are cheap, they come and go. But it's about repentance. It's about not causing harm. It's about obedience to principle. It's about affirmative behavior. It's about problem solving. So I see their attempts to Christianize the government as being incomplete, all right? What's happening to our society is that people are teaching girls that when a boy is mean, it means he likes her. And we're teaching boys that being a man means asserting your power. These are toxic beliefs that don't work in holy law. They don't work in the Beatitudes of Jesus, and they don't work in society. So we need to overwrite and obsolete that kind of teaching and demonstrate and role model mutual respect, which the left doesn't even know how to do. And you know why they don't know how? Because they don't operate from the bare truth. The left has successfully kept important information out of public view. Just this whole week, there were 3 kinds of election corruption, all right? There were the counterfeit ballots, millions of them, that were sent in by people who weren't who registered voters. All right. There was the software company Dominion that actually had and admitted they had routines in the Dominion software for flipping votes. And then there were the people at the counting stations who were willfully following directions to do things incorrectly. All right. 3 kinds of election corruption. But the press minimizes the importance of the sum total of the use of all 3 of those techniques at once. Right? That's the first thing that they're not talking about. The second thing they're not talking about, the press, the media, is that expanding the 5G rollout, it mimics symptoms of the virus for which there is no vaccine. There is no vaccine against 5G. There is no vaccine against glyphosate. But the press is not telling you that 5G and glyphosate cause the same symptoms as the virus. And the third thing that the media are not paying attention to is the presence and the reality of the Smith Act against a coup, against the advocacy of overturning the government. Nobody's talking about the Smith Act and the coup. Everybody ought to be talking about it, but still the press does their thing and keeps quiet and only talks about what they want to talk about. All right. So the coup violated the Smith Act right from Jump Street. That needs to be discussed in the press. And these leftists think we're going to lie down and accept their treachery. I don't think so. I don't think so. Liberalism, as I've experienced it since I was a child, is made up of do-gooder people who have methods that are ineffective, and they're timid and they're afraid to critique systemic ignorance of their hierarchy's behavior. So they make it personal. Instead, they get into identity, naming, blaming, and shaming. My dog has to poo. She needs to go out. You wait. Okay. Then let's talk about the non-productive problem reaction solution protection rackets that the elites, the moneyed, the corporations, the medical cartels, big pharma, vaccines, lotteries, higher Marxist education, debt, peer-reviewed research grants, okay, political activism, election rigging. These are all business now, baby. Soros subsidizes these businesses as if they are a valid way to run an economy in the United States in this generation. I do not relate to this generation. I do not relate to what is going on now. Okay. And so what happens is I have to pay for useless treatments and procedures that don't do me any good, that insurance doesn't cover, okay? And in medical collections, it's a huge business, and cash cow interest on unpayable compounding debts for iatrogenic methods kind of gets me upset, okay? And these hide in credit scores, and they secretly block you from real credit you need, or from travel, or from a job that you might want, okay? These records that I kept referring to. And now look at student debt, okay? Student debt encompasses the function and reality of collections, cash cow interest on unpayable compounding debts for leftist political indoctrination, okay? And these debts too hide in credit scores and secretly block needed finance, free travel, and co-available jobs. So we already have a Chinese system of social score. Confess, grovel, and pay. Yeah?
There's a question.
Okay, well, let them wait a minute, okay? We already have a Chinese system of social score in a protection racket named medical collections. And that's interest on unpayable compounding debts for either iatrogenic methods or school that didn't get you the job you wanted or whatever, okay? Now, I realize not all of our social and public lives are directed personally, okay? Business is characterized, if you use the customer service line rightly, on indifference. And indifference with suspicion is natural and normal in the wild. Animals are naturally impersonal. I'll get to your question in a minute. But one has to be taught to love unconditionally or to hate unconditionally by society and social contexts. And our society speaks and sings and talks and lectures about love. But in the education system, it teaches and reinforces comparisons and divisions and factions and hatred everywhere, from kindergarten through university. It's not just the freedom to be a creative soul without surveillance that we're lacking right now. It's the freedom to speak out, and it's the freedom to live without the crimes that we are seeing against us. Treachery, debauchery, slavery, usury, witchcraft. We want to be free of manipulation, domination, and victimization. We want to be free of crimes, including political election crimes. Okay, got that? Now let's see what this question is. I believe that there will be no U.S. president. You believe, honey? Okay, you believe. You can believe whatever you want, okay? Has this ever happened before? Read a history book. I believe that there have been times when there was no president, when a president was assassinated, and that has happened 3 or 4 times, okay? And generally, the people who took over after the assassination were the ones who created the problem that the assassinated president tried to deal with. Okay. Now, binary choices are not the only way to proceed. Wow, that's there it is. There it is. Binary choices are not the way to proceed. And binary digital computers work on everything being binary. And life is analog. And that's why the computers are essentially stupid. They are really stupid. Wow, it's only taken me a half an hour to get through this. But I did want to go through the Georgia Guidestones a little bit, because they take presumption and arrogation. Have you heard this new word, arrogation, Stephen? Arrogation, that's the presumption of power. All right. Arrogation. It was on Twitter today. For instance, under number 2, after they eliminate 85% of the population by culling, murder, genocide, or whatever, they want to guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. That is an intrusion that violates the souls of the people. All right. 3, unite humanity with a living new language. There is no language based on binary digital that can articulate life which is analog. So as long as they're using algorithms and mathematical formulae and sets of generic and jargon words, they're not going to achieve that. Rule passion, faith, and tradition, and all things with tempered reason. That is mechanization. That is making people live like animals indifferently. I don't think you want that, and I sure as hell don't want it. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. They don't even know what this means, because yes, just laws protect society, but they don't protect against feelings, against thoughts, against wishes, against the demands of survival. So they don't, the best set we have so far are the Hebrew laws of Moses. only 254 principles cover most situations. And in the United States, I believe we have 2 or 3 million laws. Okay. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Since every dispute is a matter of relationship, a world court is not in a position to understand the subtleties of any relationship in any local area. So they're not going to be competent to do that. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. The practice of bureaucracy is to exert more control all the time and not less. So I don't know who this is directed at, but you're preaching to the choir. Okay, balance personal rights with social duties. This is a generalization that has no effective content. Prize truth, beauty, love, and seeking harmony with the infinite. Those are not equal. They're apples and oranges and peacocks and stones. So prizing different things doesn't sort anything out. Don't be a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. I want you to tell that to the military industrial complex and its networks of professionals who operate by problem reaction solution, all right? The New World Order, I call it, all right? So that's my review and summary of what we have got going on this week. And again, if you're around YouTube taking walks in London and Paris and Berlin, you notice that we're getting a foretaste of the future with these cities. I don't know why they weren't designed to be made obsolete, but the political New World Order insists that what they're going to do is empty out 85% of the population and then hyper control the rest. That doesn't make any sense to me. I hope it doesn't make any sense to you either. And for my friends on Facebook, that's been the review of the week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.